Hello and welcome to Hillsideforge. I've been operating out of this shop since 2018. I'm going to be your blacksmith and bladesmith, Brad. Now today for our first project, we're going to be making a blacksmith knife. A blacksmith knife is a combination of bladesmithing and blacksmithing. Bladesmithing because we're going to be forging out a blade. Blacksmithing because it's going to require hammer control and tapering to take a long tang and draw it out and then curl it back around in a very ornate fashion to make the handle. Now for our steel today, we're not going to be using anything crazy. We're going to be using stuff that any beginner blacksmith can find. It's going to be a lawnmower blade. Now a lawnmower blade you can find at yard sales or a junkyard, anything like that. What we're going to do is we're going to start and make a line right around here and then go down to about there. Actually, I lied. We're probably going to start right about there and go down to here. Now we're going to use this part where the blade goes in as a cheating point, as an isolation point for the tang, so it's a little bit less work for us to do later. This is about having fun, not about a technical way of making it. So if you want to get out there and do something simple and fun and have a one-day build, this is going to be the project for you. So let's get these lines drawn on and this cut out. All right, we got our line drawn on there. Let's go ahead and cut it out. All right, there we go. Okay, now that we have our piece cut, before we can get into the fire, we need to worry about preform. This is going to be some cuts and lines that are going to make our job easier down the road. We're not going to cut anything to shape, but we are going to cut shapes that will help us with just ease of process, you know, because as much as Forge and Fire wants you to make a knife from beginning to end, sometimes when you're at home, you want to enjoy the process and not blow your shoulder out. Not everybody here is built like a power hammer. All right, so for the preform, what we're going to do is we're going to cut a line. Now, this is going to sound weird, but we're going to actually work backwards to work forwards. So this is going to be our blade when we're all said and done. So we're going to cut an angled line from here to about here. Okay? And now since this is going to be our blade, we're just going to take off this corner here. So we're going to make a line there, and we're going to make a little line here. Okay, now let's go ahead and zip that corner off. Now I flipped it around here so we can take our flap disc and we're just going to put a little groove in there. Okay, so we should have something that looks like this. Now we have these harsh corners that are right here, here, and here. Now I'm going to use my grinder to go ahead and round those off, just because those harsh corners can turn into cold shuts later. So we're going to go ahead and round those off real quick, and then we'll fire up the forge and get to working. Okay, now that our forge is good and hot, let's go ahead and get this in the fire, shall we? Now we're going to work the tang first, so we're going to work the back portion, the thinner portion, where we made the isolation point, where the blade is. So let's go ahead and get her hot. Okay, so now that our steel is up to temperature, which you want to be forging around 1800 and higher, it's going to be that bright orange color. So now that we're there, we're going to start working. Now, we made that little isolation point when we used the flap disc to cut that little point in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lean that right here on the edge of the anvil, so I make sure that's my isolation point. And I make sure I don't work past that point, so I don't start working the blade. So we're going to work the tang back. So let's do it. we're just gonna keep on doing that. Now as I'm working this, I'm making sure that I flip my sides because I want to work it evenly, because if I keep working it evenly, I should get a nice square taper all the way back. If I work one side more than the other, I'll get a weird rectangle shape and it just won't be right in the end. Okay, so right now, after working the tang down, we're at about 8.5 inches. So we wanted to get it closer to 9 because when we bend it around, we're going to lose an inch on the bend. And the average handle should be about 4.5 inches because the average hand is about 3.5 to 4. So if you go with 4.5, you're pretty much always safe. So we're going to shoot for that 9 inches. We're probably not going to make it, but if we get close to 8 3/4, great. So we're going to take one more heat doing that, then we're going to start forming it around. Okay, so I'm going to lay the steel on here. And with that last, probably about 1 inch we have, I'm going to flatten that out and put a slight curve in it. That way when we fold it back around, it's going to be like a guard for your finger so you don't slide up onto the blade. Down just a little bit more. Perfect. You know what? I don't think this would be a blacksmith knife unless we put a little twist in it. So we're gonna put a twist in it. The heat. You gotta get that bend all the way back around. And one more time. Please don't shear, please don't shear, please don't shear. Hey, thank you. That's kind of nice. Very nice, very nice. Okay, now every shop, blacksmith shop, will probably have a wooden mallet or a wooden stick, 2x4, anything like that. So we put those twists in, and the reason they have those mallets is because we don't want to deform those twists hitting it with our hammer. So wood can hit the steel without damaging the intricacy of the twist we just did. I call these a schwacker, but names and opinions may vary. But what we're going to do with this is actually start hammering the handle back into shape. So without any further ado, let's get schwacking. Okay, so our first step is going to be to grab right about here at the flat part above our twist, and we're going to start to bend that back. So we're just about in line right there with our handle. Now we're going to take our schwacker, start beating that down into place, and just with our tong or with our pliers every now and then, give it a little adjustment, kind of beat it into place. And we're going to get another heat on there real quick. Grab our pliers real quick and pick this up a smidge. Back to our schwacker. Pound that in. Back to our pliers. Now we're just trying to really make that fit in there. Be a comfortable handle. Okay, so this is where our handle is going to be for right now. Now what we're going to do is flip it around and we're going to start working on the blade. For our first step, it's going to be to take those curves we rounded off and we're going to hammer that into a point, almost like it's going to look like a Viking sax knife almost. That's just to account for the blade moving when we bevel it later. here, but I'm only going to do it where the ricasso area is going to be. The ricasso is the area between the blade and the guard itself, or the handle itself. And I'm going to put a little recession in there before I go through and do the beveling of the knife. So now the next step is to move on to the beveling. I'm going to use the round side of the hammer, start at one point and work out. Curve to be that aggressive, so the edge is still thick. I'm gonna start keeping that straighter. It's gonna cause some little bends and wobbles and wibbles, but nothing we can't straighten out. Now that we got the blade all forged out, we're going to run some normalizing cycles. This is going to relax the grain and relax all the stress that we put on the steel throughout the forging process. All right, now with the final straightening done, it's into the quench. Now you don't want a huge fireball, but because we're not putting the tang all the way in, it's going to catch fire a little bit. Usually if you have a big fireball, it means you pulled it out of the oil way too soon. It means you're not going to get a proper hardening. But essentially what you see, when you see the steel changing white like that, it means that on a structural level, the crystalline structure and all that is changing inside the knife, making it hard as glass, which leads us to our next process. Is we're going to do some tempering. Before we do tempering, we're going to have to do a little bit of cleanup grinding so we can see our temper colors happen, but after that we'll be in really good shape. So this is where we are after the quench. We have relatively no forge scale on there, which is amazing. This is just being wiped off with a shop rag after the quench, after it's cooled down. So the next step is to do the profiling on the 2x72, and then we'll use the clean steel that we see from profile grinding to temper it. So pitter patter, let's get at her. So now you can see here with the profile grind we did, we can see the clean steel on the back. So that's what we're going to use to see the color change. Now we'll be able to see it a little bit down through here, but mainly we're going for blue backing is what they call it, but we're going to take it a little bit hotter than blue back. And I put it in the vise here because the vise acts as a heat sink, so the heat won't go lower than where the vise is. So it's going to protect our edge and keep our edge nice and hard, but give our spine some flexibility to it. Travel just a little bit. We're going to pull it out of the vise. Take it down here to the water. Woo, run that again. And then put just the edge in. Now we can see those colors coming in right across that line there, which is perfect. So we have from the end of the blade to the tip is nice and hard still, and this has all been blue backed, so it's perfect. Okay. So now we're going to start laying the beveling on this thing. Now I'm going to try and do a brute to forge, so I want to leave some scale back here and back here, but I want to try and get most of this clean. Now, this is where we're at with a 36 grit. Looking pretty good. Getting the edge down to where I want it, but before I continue and put an edge on it with a 36 grit belt, I'm going to switch up to an 80 grit belt, and then we'll probably finish it off with a 120. So it's going to be a dirty finish. However, I think, you know, with the rough toughness of this design, it's going to match well, because it's not made to be a super beauty piece. It's just made to be a functional thing that, you know, a knife you use in the shop where you can, you know, throw a leather sheath on it and carry it around the woods or whatever, but nothing high end, just a quick fun project. Now, yes, I am using a grinder, a 2x72, but you could also use a 2x42, or there's the 1x30, or even an angle grinder. For the longest time I used an angle grinder, and you can get similar results. I just do this for the speed aspect of it. Yes, the other things take longer, but you can still achieve the same thing. So I took it up to 120, and this is where we're at right now. Now we're going to add a little false edge down along here on both sides real quick, and then we'll go on to the sharpening, and then this baby's pretty much done. Heck yeah. So with it all said and done, this is what we got. Now I went ahead and sharpened it up. So let's see how we do. Perfect. This was a fun little project, little one-day build. You can do it in your shop. So now that you've seen how I did it, why don't you go out in your shop and make you